The human body is absolutely amazing. Whatever you put in your stomach, there's a lot of acid inside of that tummy, and it breaks down everything that goes into it. And then the body selects to what it's going to assimilate and what it's going to reject. And so if things aren't good, they're going to be rejected. And so these modified foods probably, if their food value is zero or low, then it's going to be rejected. I don't think there's any harm in as much as that the genetic makeup of the food has been altered. In other words, it's poisonous or it's derogatory or it's disruptive. I don't think that happens when it's modified. It just, the cell structure, what I'm looking at in my mind right now, the cell structure is different. It's made to be bigger or something that's maybe more difficult to digest. And so the worst case you would have on this is a little bit of digestion difficulty. And of course, it's up to everybody to select what food they eat. People who eat only organic, people are vegan, they're vegetarian, they're meat eaters, and their genetic makeup demands that kind of food. There are people who require to have good health to eat meat, and they're perfectly comfortable with that. And there are people who, through their society or their heritage, are vegetarians, true and true, and they are very healthy. The mistake that people make is crossing over, intellectually deciding what their body needs for nutrition or nourishment, and that doesn't work. And you see a lot of people on special healthy diets, but they're not well. It's because their genetic makeup, their heritage, if you will, says that yes, they ought to have fish. They ought to have some different kind of protein than what they're taking right now, as opposed to powder or some other source. And some people cannot digest dairy products. And some people can take dairy products if the lactose is taken out of them. So there people are lactose intolerant. So everybody's different. A long time ago, I met a man. I'm going to call him. He was a doctor. His name was Ray, and he was doing experiments on giving people mono meals. That means every meal, one food, one type of food. Onions for breakfast, apples for lunch, whatever. But I remember the onions for breakfast. He found that worked well for people. I'm not going to get into that, but anyway, that was back in the mid 70s. He was talking about that, and then the book came out, Eat Right for Your Blood Type, and I have nothing to do with that, but I'll give it a shout out. And that made more sense. That your blood type would dictate the type of diet you would have, whether it's a Mediterranean diet or whether it's a meat diet or a vegetarian diet, etc. I prefer myself a Mediterranean diet. Seems to be well-rounded, which has lots of vegetables and fish. That seems to do fit me the best. But I didn't find out until I was an old man in my 60s that I used to love chocolate milk. The chocolate milk I was eating was giving me mucus and colds all the time. I even went to a doctor and got shots for it I was allergic to something. Nobody knew what it was. Well, it turns out lactose is not a good thing for me. So by experiment and by keeping track of your own health, if you eat certain kind of foods, that makes you go to the washroom really quick. That's good to have in your mind if you're having difficulty that way. Eat those foods. You don't need to take laxatives. Or the other way around. If you're weak and you don't understand why, then look at where did you come from? Did you come from the mountains in Europe, or did you come from Africa, or did you come from South America? Somebody once told me, was an engineer, that back in the day when polio was breaking out in the US and Canada, that people south of the border didn't have any polio cases. It was because of the hot peppers, the chili peppers that they were eating was killing off the virus, the polio virus in their gut. Well, fast forward to today, we have an understanding of leaky gut syndrome. That was pretty popular just a couple of years ago, and still it's relevant, and it's something to take into consideration if you're having digestive problems. Maybe you're having leaky gut syndrome. So, getting back to the point, I think that it's a choice of what kind of food you are going to put in your mouth, because what you put in your mouth, what you put through the gate, if you will, to your mouth, determines your health. It's not how much you eat, it's what you eat. And if you keep that rule of thumb, then you'll find out, when you eat something and you start having gas or burping, or you're having difficulty in digestion, don't eat that food. That's the problem. And again, going back to Dr. Ray, not his real name, but part of his name, uh, you can, by isolating and eating one food at a time, find out what is the best food for you and what food is not. And you can do that right away by eating something and say, "Oh, my tummy's, I'm bloated, I'm whatever." We get the point, my friends. So back to the point is I don't think that this genetically modified food is bad. It might not be as good as organic grown food. Okay, and somewhere in the middle is the rest of the food that we eat when farmers use fertilizers and pesticides. Organic food doesn't look pretty sometimes. It's got little pits in it. It's got the little, the worms have taken a bite out of it here and there, but it is genuinely organic. But it has the vitality of being natural. I mean, after all, as we were hunters and gatherers back in the day, we used to go around and pick the fruit off the trees. Watch out for Adam and Eve, but that's beside the point. That we would eat that fruit, and it would be wherever we were. If we went into a field and there were blueberries, our ancestors used to stuff themselves with blueberries until the blueberry patch was exhausted. And they'd move on down the road, and that's when they might find beans, or they would find pineapples on a tree or something like that. So in a way, mono meals is the natural way to eat. But I can't see myself going to a fancy restaurant and saying, "Can I have a plate of olives, please?" Or I only want those brown beans, okay? Unless, of course, I have my friend Raul's Chalio's restaurant in Fort Worth. Best authentic Mexican food I've ever had in my life. Chalio's in Fort Worth. Give them a free shout out there. So you find out what your body operates under, what you digest, and how you feel stronger. When you eat food and you go to sleep or you feel weak, that means you've either had the wrong combination or the wrong food. So watch out. I mean, when I travel, I don't eat any kind of shellfish at all. Anything that grows on, anything that's a bottom crawler is something you should avoid in the oceans. Anything that doesn't have gills or fins, scales and fins, don't eat it. If it's a fish, it has scales and fins. I think that's the rule of thumb. I'm getting something mixed up. So anyway, that's an interesting question. It's a good one. But is there a danger in eating genetically modified food? I don't think so. Is it good for you? That's questionable. Should you eat it? That's your decision. But I don't think it's going to harm everyone. And if you're an advocate about eating the right diet or whatever, everybody has their free will and free choice. So encourage people to eat better in the simple way I've just brought up with these things that are popping in my mind intuitively as I'm talking.